Hello, I'm Peter Eyers, and you're listening to Stages, the podcast that converses
World
with
War II
creatives
gave
about
us Lady
craft,
Forgotto and
career.
Oklahoma.
Without the arts, we are diminished.
We had the kind of creative freedom.
I was on television as a child, and then I was in Cotty's happy hour.
She leaned across to me and she said, one day, you'll be doing that.
Mind-boggling. They were even lined with purple leather.
I went to the ABC and auditioned.
I was so fit at the end of that, you could have entered me in the Melbourne Cup.
I still firmly believe that great work can be made in small places.
If nobody's going to respect your talent, you've got to respect it.
I hope I've been entertaining, that's all.
Well, that's very kind of you, Peter. But you are a friend.
And as are you.
Yeah, it's a date.
It's a day.
Hello, I'm Peter Eyers, and you're listening to the Stages podcast. Conversations with creatives about career, craft, and what matters to them. How are you doing? Times are tough at present, and COVID's ugly presence has had considerable impact on our artistic community. From the arrival of the virus in 2020, it has ravaged the economy and craft of our artistic sectors. We should be midway through Opera Australia's production of the Tales of Hoffmann, but sadly, like many productions who were gracing our stages, or about to, the production had to be postponed to a future season due to the New South Wales Government's extended stay-at-home orders in Sydney. Opera Australia's devastating announcement occurred about a week after I recorded with opera superstar Jessica Pratt, who was in town to sing all the female leads in this brand new production, crafted by celebrated director Damiano Micheletto. Jessica Pratt has been hailed by the New York Times as a soprano of gleaming sound, free and easy high notes, agile coloratura runs, and lyrical grace. She is considered one of today's foremost interpreters of some of bel canto's most challenging repertoire. Jessica is an extraordinary talent, and it was a treat to share this hour with her. Though recorded prior to the postponement of the opera, it is essential that we feature this conversation today to mark what would have been the Tales of Hoffmann season, and also to celebrate a truly great artist. Jessica Pratt, I have to say good evening and thank you so much for joining us in this episode. I am so thrilled that you can be part of it. And I should let the listeners know that we're recording this at 7 p.m. at night after you've had a full day of rehearsal.
Well, actually, it wasn't a full day today because, with the lockdown and everything else, today I just had a costume fitting in the end. So it was a full 2 hours. Full 2 hour day of costume fitting.
Oh, I don't feel so bad then.
No. It was supposed to be a full 2 hours rehearsal, but it's all a bit complicated at the moment.
You're back in Australia, of course, preparing for the Tales of Hoffmann, which is at the Opera House in August, playing 4 of the roles. Does that make you 4 times as exhausted?
I would say twice as exhausted as a regular opera. Most of the roles I sing tend to be quite long, heavy roles, so it's not too bad. But I would say it's on par with, an uncut Semiramide, which is 5.5 hours. This one uncut is a good 4.5 hours.
Wow.
Depending on who's conducting. But it's here we've shortened it a bit so the audience won't get terribly annoyed.
Olympia, Antonia, Giulietta, and Stella. Do you have a favourite?
Antonia, because the music is so beautiful. It really takes you away. It's something else.
Is she the doll? Does she do the doll song?
No, the doll is the first one, Olympia. Olympia is, Olympia, I don't really see it as much of a role because she just has an aria and a little bit of ensemble and that's it. So It's more the bulk of the work in the evening is Antonia, and it's also Giulietta. Giulietta has quite a big duet with Hoffmann, and in this particular production, we're reinserting the coloratura aria for Giulietta, because originally, when Hoffmann wrote the opera, he wrote it for one coloratura soprano, but he died before the opening night, and the soprano and the theatre decided it was too long, and they cut the Giulietta act completely. The music got lost, and the whole act was only rediscovered in 1992, I think it was.
Wow.
And so it's actually not been available, and in its stead, a lot of theatres and impresarios at the time rewrote the Giulietta act with bits that remained, bits that they could find. They added new pieces. The septet, for example, is a piece not written by Offenbach, the same for the Scintillanti Diamanti, which is one of the most famous pieces. So, I mean, it's a really peculiar opera in that there are certain pieces we really don't want to let go of because they're great and we really associate them with Hoffmann, but they weren't written by Offenbach. They were written to his music. So, they do have, his tunes. But yeah, it's quite a fascinating score with its history. Yeah.
So bits of the score have been grafted onto an existing score.
Yeah, basically they had bits of the Giulietta act, and then they thought, well, let's make a big finale using the Baccarat for the septet. So that was, quoting the Baccarat. Scintillanti Diamanti quotes something else in another opera of Offenbach's. And Giulietta was without an aria, but then when they discovered the actual music, for example, the duet with Hoffmann is the same. A lot of the rest of it is pretty similar. So they obviously did have bits and pieces, but the aria was missing completely. They just had a very simplified version, and usually gets cut. So we brought back in the really super hard version, which I think I remember reading the Soprano at the time when Offenbach wrote it, said, no, it's too hard.
Is there much off-stage time between characters?
In this particular production, there is, because we have big set changes. So we shall have an interval between Olympia and Antonia, and an interval between Antonia and Giulietta, which is really nice. Occasionally, it's done with just the one interval between Antonia and Giulietta, which is a little bit, it's not too bad, but I think the piece needs the space as well. I think, you need a lot of mental break between these acts.
4 characters that would require lots of costume, lots of wigs, lots of different looks.
Costume, changing looks, yes.
How important? Well, they're very important to establish character, wigs, costumes, etc. But you've got to be comfortable as the singer to perform in that wig and be able to move in that costume. Do you have much of a say in the look of the costume,
No.
the feel of the costume, the wigs? No. This is it.
One tries. One tries to make suggestions. It really depends on the situation. Of course, the costume department here is lovely, and I would say I need a bit more space in the chest because when I sing, I open the ribs by about 3 to 4 centimeters. So I need that space. I can't have something that's tight across my torso, the upper part of my torso more than anything else. And the other problem is skirts. Very often I'll go to the theatre and they'll make a skirt that fits me, and I say, well, it has to be attached to the top of the dress because I expand also my waist when I sing. And if I expand it and you fit it to that, when I take a breath, the skirt falls off. So it takes, sometimes I actually have to get to the dress rehearsal and the skirt has to fall off for them to understand that I really mean it. And that has happened.
Yes.
But generally now I manage to get everybody to attach the skirts to the tops and everything else that we need. And movement is another thing, when you get on stage and you see what the regista in English is, a stage director wants, then I'll be in a fitting and I'll say, okay, but can I just now crawl on the floor, kneel down, lie down and see if the costume is movable and also if it looks okay. Because sometimes you might have a costume that looks great standing still, but as soon as you start doing all the movements, it sort of goes all over the place. So there are a lot of things, but I mean, in a place like Sydney, that's not really an issue because there's great, costume department here. So yeah. At least here it's good.
They're very important considerations, because you need to feel comfortable and
you don't want to be thinking about the skirt falling down while you're singing an F or something,
Now, Jessica, I read that you, as a child, you had career aspirations to be a veterinarian.
I did, yes.
Yeah, and you're vegetarian as well?
I am, yep.
Yeah, so I would assume a great love of animals.
Indeed, a great love of animals. And we have at home with my husband, we have 3 dogs and 2 cats right now and counting. It goes up and down depending on whatever I encounter on my travels. But yeah, thankfully I found a man who's as much in love with animals as I, if not more in love with animals than I am. So he's very supportive of my inability to leave stray animals on the street.
Oh, that's good. Yes, I was going to ask, with your extensive commitments all around the world, whether you had the time and the space for animals. But I guess they're always there like family, waiting to greet you when you're home.
They are. I used to travel with my 2 little dogs before I met my husband, but we have a house in the countryside in Florence, and it has a lot of acreage, and the house is big, and my dogs pretty much made it quite clear that they thought it would be better if they just stayed at home from now on. And I'd feel a bit mean forcing them to come and, travel around and stay in little hotel rooms when they can run around and, they're very happy there. So, yeah.
So you're not based in Italy, of course?
Yeah, I've been based there for about 15 years.
Right. And you moved there for study originally, was it?
Mm-hmm. Gianluigi Gelmetti heard me singing in a competition here in Sydney, and he invited me to the Rome Opera to watch the operas for like 6 months. So I went over there and I called up the opera house and I said, I'm here for the Young Artist program. And they promptly told me there wasn't a Young Artist program. And so I said, well, Gianluigi Gelmetti invited me here. And they said, oh, he's not here. Call back in a few weeks. So I called back in a few weeks and he's from the other end of the room. Il canguro, vieni. And so, I went into the theater and he said, okay, well, you're just going to follow me around and watch the shows and learn. So I did. I watched all the rehearsals, all the, musical rehearsals, the singers. It was incredible. And I was really lucky because the first opera I saw was Tancredi of Rossini with Marielle de Villa and Raúl Jiménez and Daniela Barcelona. And it was really, awesome. It was
And
just
you
an
were,
awesome.
you were hooked.
I was more than hooked. I was waking up in the middle of the night singing Giusto Dio. Still my favorite piece.
From Canguro.
See, he still calls me the Kanguru. I don't think he's ever learnt my name. We were both singing. We were both working in Genova a few years ago, and I was doing a Lucia, and I think he was doing Tristan and Isolde or something like that. And he sent one of his young conductors up to tell me to come down and say hello. So I came down. Kanguru, go
Yeah.
I was born in England, yeah, and I'd also gone over to Italy a few years before to learn Italian, and I swore I would never go back. I hated the country, and I found them so rude, and that was it. I was like, I'm never going back there. And so when Gianluigi told me, said come to Italy, I was like, don't know. And turns out I got over that, and now I really love it and wouldn't want to live anywhere else. So, things change.
What was it that changed you, do you think? Was it falling in love?
No, absolutely not. No, no, I only met my husband 4 years ago. I was there. I think I just learnt more about the culture and how they are, because they do all sorts of things that for an Anglo-Saxon, especially an English Anglo-Saxon, is offensive. Like, for example, my husband, when he wants me to stop speaking, he just puts his hand in front of my face.
Oh, no.
I know, right? That's so rude.
Talk with the hand.
Or yeah, exactly. It just does that, which they all do, and it used to really upset me when I first went. I was like, oh my God. And the other thing he does is when I say, when I ask him a question, like, do you want dinner? He goes, and I'm like, yes or no? That's the response. And the other day,
sounding like Kanguro.
I know, right? And the other day, I actually did it back to him. Like, he asked me something, and he said, "You did it! So I've clearly been there too long now. I also parked on the sidewalk the other day, a couple of months ago, when I was going to the bank. There were no parking spaces. I just parked the car on the sidewalk, walked in, and I got out. I looked at the car, and I was like, I've been here too long.
How did you tackle the language situation? Because I imagine you didn't have much Italian when you first went there.
No, I had no Italian when I went there. And I actually asked Gianluigi if I could, because I was going to rehearsal. I would get to the theatre before everybody and I would leave after everybody. So I was there 12, 15 hours a day, every day. And I remember meeting him one day and saying, asking if I could take some time off to study Italian. And he looked at me and he said, no, you will learn Italian in the theatre. And I said, okay. I wasn't much of a fighter. I was like, okay. And so I came back to Australia, and I remember I was with Nicole Dorigo, who's also the coach here with the French and the Italian at Sydney Opera House. And she was my coach at the time, and I was singing Donna Anna. And I was singing Forze, Forze un giorno, because in Rome they say Forze and Forza, and it's Forse and Forza. There's no TS. But I was convinced because, she corrected me, and I said, no, Nicole, I've just spent 6 months in Rome. It's the capital of Italy. You say Forza. I was like, now I know because, my husband's a Neapolitan. I've lived in Como. I live now in Florence. So I've heard all the different accents and, sort of mentally got over that.
Yes, different regions would have subtle differences in
They
pronunciation.
have massive differences.
Yeah.
They're almost completely, the dialects are like a different language entirely. I can do very well with Romano because that's what I actually learned. I learned Romano. I didn't learn Italian. I learned the Roman dialect because that's what the stagehands were talking. They were talking in the Roman dialect. The same with the Neapolitan. I can understand the Neapolitan dialect, which doesn't really sound that much like Italian. The one from Bari, I will never understand because that's all consonants and no vowels. It's impossible. I don't think I'll ever get that. I got the Venetian one. I managed to understand the Venetian one, but that took me quite a while. And And the Comascan I couldn't really understand. The really pure Comascan from the mountains is just like it really is another language. But every region has their own dialect, and they are quite separate languages. They're based in Italian, but they're very particular.
Jessica, you are acknowledged alongside Melba and Sutherland a lot. Does that excite you or fill you with dread?
Neither. I mean, I admire Sutherland and Melba a lot, not just for the massive work ethic that they had. I think that's something that actually singles out Australian singers in general. They tend to have a really big work ethic. And I don't know whether it's because we're on a continent away from the rest of the world, and we feel like, maybe we, especially at that time, maybe they compared themselves with the recordings that arrived, and they said, well, that's the standard I have to get to before I go there. I'm not sure what it is, but, if you compare them to other people of their era, they didn't have necessarily the kind of determination and work ethic that these two women had, and it was incredible. I mean, the things that Melba went through in Paris was impressive, that she kept going. And of course, they had great voices, and they were coloratura sopranos. I mean, I'm just glad I'm not Greek and dark-haired, quite frankly.
There would be another one. But you are Jessica. You are Jessica Pratt, aren't you? And
I am.
your own person. I guess the thing that you do have in common with Melba and Sutherland is that you were the only Australian after them to have been invited to sing Lucia de Lammermoor and Milan.
I was, and I had an easier time of Melba, I can tell you that. They tried to chase her out of town.
Oh, why?
She was because they were jealous.
Right.
They tried to get her away. She got all these death threats. They said, don't do it. Don't debut at La Scala. We're going to poison your food, all sorts of things. She actually didn't eat outside for, I think, a week or something before the performance. But then she did it, and it was a massive success. I think sometimes we think we have a hard time with the audience in Italy nowadays, but it's nothing like it was before.
Yeah. They're a very demonstrative audience, aren't they? They
they let you know what they think in the moment and for years afterwards.
In the moment. So middle of performance, can you sometimes get a reaction? Yeah.
All the time. Yeah. In positive and negative. So I think the worst I ever saw was early in my career. I was in Bergamo, and we had a Puritani. And it was a difficult situation because the tenor had been sent away, and we had this new critical edition with a trio that wasn't really sung, and they called the tenor at the last minute, and it just all went from bad to worse, and the audience was catcalling within about 10 minutes of the opera starting. And they just kept going the whole way through. And, they were yelling out things like, vergognati, which is, shame on you, and we want our money back, and go home. And it was just like, oof. And then I got to the finale and of Viene il Tempio, and I have to start again. And they all started arguing between themselves, because some people were saying be quiet, other people were booing, and it was, I think, my second ever opera. And I looked at the conductor, I'm like, what do I do? Do I wait for them to calm down, or do I sing above them? I don't know. And in the end, I just started above them. I just sang over them. So yeah, I mean, they weren't booing me, if that's any consolation, but it does disturb everybody. Like, the orchestra gets nervous, the chorus gets nervous. Of course, the singer that's getting booed really has a hard evening. And I've seen really unfair booing as well, even in Spain, where they've just decided that they don't like one of my colleagues, and the whole night they just boo them every time they go on stage. And I don't like, there's a lot of weird things that go on, between other singers. Funny things happen over there. But yeah.
Sounds like
we've had situations where the police have been called, I mean, I remember somebody telling me about a story that had happened a few years back. I won't mention where there was a festival. And the booing was so severe that they already had police on site because they thought that they wouldn't like the staging of the opera because it was quite political. And there was a fight broke out in the audience, and the police came in and they, pulled some people out, and they sat one of them down, a young guy, he was probably in his 30s, I think he was. And they said to him, you got to calm down. It's just an opera, it's just a staging. He's like, the staging? It's not the staging. It's the soprano that's annoying me. Like, it was just... They get so upset. It's like a personal thing. So yeah, but in the other hand, they get as enthusiastic as they do upset, so it's also very rewarding. But I had quite a strong following of the really like football fan type public, and still do throughout most of my career. But in the beginning of my career, I remember my colleagues would look at me and they'd be like, Jessica, are they coming from Parma? Are they coming from Milan? Because they would come in buses. They just get like 2 buses and they'd go wherever I sang. And my colleagues would be like, hating on me. I'm like, I can't tell them not to come. Like, I can't do that. I mean, what am I supposed to do? Dude, just practice.
Jessica, what does the role of Lucia mean to you?
It's a very important role to me because it was the first role I ever sang. It was how I debuted in opera in Como, and I sang it a lot everywhere. I tend to sing it about 2 to 3 times a year. I think it's over 40 productions now in 12 years, which is quite a lot. It's fun because there aren't many productions out there I haven't done. Like I'm like, oh, done that one. There are a couple I haven't ticked off yet. So, you know, German houses.
Do you have a favorite house?
It's a great role.
Do you have a favorite house around the world that you've played in?
There are a lot of different favorite ones for different reasons. I tend to get most nervous when I sing in Sydney because I think, you know, I grew up and had my teenage years here. So I definitely get the most worked up about productions here. I love Naples, San Carlo, because it's the biggest antique theatre in Europe and it's gorgeous. And also it's where my husband's from, so all my in-laws are there and all their friends, and I just love being in Naples. I love Maggio Musicale because I feel very, very close to the orchestra in Florence where I live. The orchestra and chorus for me are, you know, it's like family there. And I had that relationship with other theatres in the past where I was working very frequently. And so there are some theatres that, yeah, I really have a strong personal connection to, but more to the orchestra than anything else or their chorus.
Traveling around the world, you would have to be very careful, I would imagine. Things like jet lag and picking up colds and flus along the way. As an opera singer, you're really an athlete, aren't you? You're an Olympian. How do you look after yourself when you're traveling on those long flights?
Well, with the long flights, it's a question of, you know, hydration more than anything else, just making sure I have, you know, saline nasal drops. So I just sneak into the bathroom every hour and drip on my nose. That actually helps a lot. I recommend it. Highly recommend it. Fess nasal spray is also great. Just a plain salt water is fine. I don't take any medications. I don't take painkillers. You can't take painkillers when you're a singer because it, you know, it thins the blood. And so when I'm singing super high notes, it's quite natural that the chords might get a little bit bruised. But if I was to take like, you know, an ibuprofen, then the bruise could get very big because, you know, you bruise more when you're having something like that. So it means that, you know, if I have a headache, I just have to just ignore it and keep singing. And if I'm sick, then basically my only remedy is the honey water and ginger boiled up. That's it. Yeah, so basically that's what I do, try to keep it all natural. And when I'm working, obviously I have to be very careful about anything that creates reflux because that's something that singers tend to struggle with, especially after a decade of work, because the muscles, you know, stop their gastric juices coming back up and get loose with all the movement we use. And so that's always an issue. So I will avoid anything that would cause reflux while I'm singing. When I'm at home, which is very rarely, except for the last year, then I'll, you know, drink like a fish and eat cheese. And I'm pretty sure my housekeeper thinks I'm a wild drunk. Because all I do is drink a bottle of wine with my husband when I'm home for the week. And then I go off to work and I don't touch any alcohol for 6 months straight because I can't do that and sing. So, you know, drink 3 liters of water a day and all that kind of thing. And I have to do a lot of physical exercise, like, you know, breathing exercises for a good 20 minutes a day, just breathing exercises. And then the vocalises, just vocalises, and then the practice, and then I have to build up the stamina. So it's, you know, it's a lot of work. It was nice to drop the ball for a year.
Yeah. As a singer, you obviously have to be aware of anatomy also and how it all works inside.
Yes, yeah. And also you have to avoid tension, you know, especially tension is the enemy of good sound. So I've recently discovered Pilates is really helpful because it helps the core and also just helps you, I don't know, I have a tendency to sort of grab my shoulders up. And so it really is helping me just to relax the shoulders a bit. And that's been a new discovery. I also did a lot of Alexander technique when I was younger. And Feldenkrais is another thing that really helps with singing.
Yeah, great. A big fan of Pilates. I love it.
It's amazing. I've never tried it until this last month, and now I'm.
Are you on the reformer?
Yes, I love that machine.
It's like
Torturous, but so good.
yes, it's like exercising and you can lay down.
Yeah, I know, but it burns. It hurts so bad. I had an instruction. She's like, "Is it burning?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And she's like, "But the good burn." And I'm like, "I don't think there is a good burn, but yes, that burn." She's like, "Good, push, more." I'm like, ah.
Jessica, opera narratives are often defined by joy and love and tragedy. Those moments of joy and love hopefully are easy to access. But how do you deal with the darker moments that you have to play, like Lucia, for instance? How do you keep yourself emotionally available but also safe?
I don't. I can't. So what I do is in a rehearsal space, I won't put the emotion into the role. So I'll go through the paces, and I don't usually connect with my colleagues. I don't look them in the eyes. I've realized later on, I didn't realize this before, but I don't connect visually with my colleagues usually until the general, when I know nobody's going to stop me. And if I do get stopped in a general rehearsal, it's really hard for me to not smash something. Like I really, it's like trying to, excuse me, I'm experiencing like this, I'm screaming bloody murder right now. And you're like, I'm sorry, my violin's broken. I don't care. But yeah, so I have to be really careful not to lose it. Yes, that's what I do. I just get everything out, and then I'm completely exhausted the next day. And if I go out the next day, I tend to faint, so I don't go out. I just stay home, and it takes about a day, and then I'm okay. Yeah. But I discovered that it's not with every role that I'm so destroyed the next day. It's with the tragic roles, because I remember one day I fainted after Sonnambula. And I thought I'd be okay, because I went out with a tenor just for a light walk. He said, "Oh, let's go and see this thing, and there's a nice park close by." So I went, and on the way back, I fainted, and I had to I was looking for a little corner in Venice to faint privately. And two guys that were doing another show that I knew that were singers, they were like, "Jessica, what are you doing over there?" They just like found me in the corner in a piazza. And I'm like, "I'm just, I'm not feeling so great. I can't quite get home." So they come here, and they basically, like, the two of them walked me home. And so there I learnt my lesson: do not go out the day after a show, unless it's, now I can because my husband's there. So I just go with my husband, and he does the talking, and I just zone out. So yeah, they take a lot of recovery, but physical and mental. But the one I didn't have an issue with, for example, was Armida. I thought that would be even harder because it's such a long role. But there's not really a point where she's sad or, beaten upon, because I think during the whole performance, I'm cowering with some of these roles, like physically. And I think the body's psyche state joins, and your body really thinks you're under attack, especially when you're doing it in rehearsal for a month. You're constantly in this position. Your body learns that there's something wrong because you're being thrown on the floor, and you're afraid. And so, yeah. But then I did Armida, and I got up the next day, went outside, was fine, because she gets it all out. She's just angry. Yeah. It's cool. And there is a lot of throwing on the ground as well. There's a lot of beating, and you don't always get colleagues that know how to theatrically throw you on the ground. Sometimes they literally just throw you against a wall or throw you on the ground, and it hurts. And I'm covered in bruises often, and fingerprints. I have so many colleagues who do not understand that they grab you and they just imprint their fingers on you, because they haven't been taught that they just have to act. Then I do the floor.
It's an illusion.
Sometimes, it's an illusion. And sometimes I have to say to them, look, just the direction, I will make it believable, but I will make it believable, not you. And so that's fine now. But in the beginning, I wasn't really, I didn't really stand up for myself, so I didn't say things like that. Now I'm just like, that's not happening. I'm too old for that now. But I remember doing chiropractic. I went to chiropractic years ago in Milan, and he looked at my x-rays, and he looked at me and he's like, "Were you in a car accident?" And I said, "I'm sorry, what do you mean?" I said, said, no. And he said, so you've been in an abusive relationship? And I said, no. And he's like, it's okay, you can tell me. I can see it on the x-rays. It's years and years of damage. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, I can see many falls, many, hits. And I was like, oh no, I'm an opera singer. That's my job. That's my job. That's what I do for a job. And he was like, oh, okay. Don't think he really believed me, but well.
Opera singer / stunt woman.
Yeah, exactly. You learn how to fall quite quickly. Yeah. I went down the rabbit hole of YouTube last night, thoroughly indulging in many of your performances. And it is apparent that not only are you a great singer, you're a great actor. As part of your preparation, do you have drama lessons or acting lessons? I did in the past. That was the main thing I concentrated on. More than the singing was actually drama. I did I started an arts degree as, majoring in acting, and I studied privately here with the Sydney Theatre Company, a youth theatre company I think it was called, with Anthony Scoose, and it was the main thing for me because I think it's the thing I like the most. Well, one of the things I like the most about opera is going into new musicals, but also going into interpreting other characters, living other lives, and expressing the tragedies of these women. And they're really important to me. I've connected to these women a lot, and I feel like it's really important to get their stories out. I think the whole point of art is to sort of make people reflect and think, if you treat people in a certain way, there's a consequence, and this is the consequence, just putting that up in front of people, making them hopefully become a little bit more empathetic.
I was delighted to learn also that you're now a dessert.
I am. Yes, Maggie made a beautiful dessert.
Maggie Beer and La Dolce Jessica.
Yeah, La Dolce Jessica.
So
I actually had it made for my wedding, and it was served at my wedding as well.
So there's something to add to the menu of peach Melba and pavlova.
Jessica. 3 of us now.
Jessica, as in your youth as a girl, did you study any other instruments, or was voice the only?
Yeah, I studied the piano, percussion, the trumpet, a little bit of tuba, but not very well, and a little bit of clarinet because my sister was playing the clarinet. I couldn't do the trombone though; that was my brother's instrument. I thought that was a bit complicated. But I did a good 10 years of the trumpet. I played it throughout high school, and I started at 7. So I love the trumpet. It's my favorite instrument.
So music was a great presence in your childhood.
Yes, my dad is a tenor and a conductor, so we would basically spend all the weekends at the community center where he conducted an orchestra, and I would just sort of play with my brother and sister around the stage, and we'd listen to rehearsals. And I think that's why when I'm in a theatre I feel the most at home, because we moved around a lot when I was younger, and the only real constant was the theatre. And so when I get into a theatre, I have this sense of calm that I don't have anywhere else, except in nature. I have it in nature as well.
Well, some of those forests, etc., can be nature's theatre, can't they?
They are very theatrical, aren't they?
Yeah. And theatres are like cathedrals. They're our churches, aren't they?
Exactly.
Do you have a favourite location in a theatre? Do you enjoy the wings?
Backstage.
Backstage, yeah. Especially when it goes on.
Under the stage, the wings, backstage, above the stage, if I can sneak up there. Not so easy anymore, but I used to do that a lot when I was younger.
Who were the vocalists that you were listening to in your youth?
But Carlos, I think, was the first I ever really, sat up to and listened. Obviously, I was watching my dad because he would sing in the opera in Opera Queensland and in England as well before we left. And so I would watch. I think I watched the Lucia that they did, because I remember very clearly the Lucia falling upside down on the stairs when she died. And from that point on, I was like, oh, I have to do that. Okay. And I would get on the couch and practice singing upside down with my head on the floor. And I ended up doing that production, and I could do the head upside down thing. I was very proud. It took, 25 years since seeing it and actually doing it. But I could do it when I was asked. I was ready. I'd seen it. But yeah, no, those, and in Italy, like Mariella De Via, as I said, she's incredible, and Caballé, and Sills. I love Beverly Sills as well. Well, the great coloratura, really. Annick Massis, amazing singer.
When did you discover that your voice might be something special?
I don't think I really did. I mean, I remember when I was a child, bumping down the stairs and listening. I always used to hide on the stairs and listen to my dad's singing lessons that he'd give. And I remember quite clearly he was asking the singer to sing a note, and I sang it, but I would have only been about 6 or 7. And I sang the note, and he turned around, opened the door, and he said, she's going to be a great singer. And I think when you say that to a child and you're their father, you just believe them. Yeah. You just do, And so from that point on, I was going to be a great singer. Like there was tunnel vision. I just didn't think there was anything else. I wanted to be a vet. I wanted to be a psychologist, but I had to be a great singer because that's what Dad had decided, and that was that. And so it was quite an interesting journey for me, because he was, a principal singer, and he gave that up when my mother was pregnant with me. I was the second child, and he decided to, take a steady job and not move around and, enjoy his family. And he had a great career as a teacher and won many awards. And I was the singer. Like, I had to be the opera singer. And I think, like, in my early 20s, I punished him a lot. Like, I didn't tell him. I remember one time I got into Operalia, and he'd received the email, and he called me, and I was at work. And he was all excited. He was like, you're in Operalia. You're going to Paris. And I was like, Dad, is it urgent? Because I'm working. If it's not, I'm in the print room right now, and I have to finish my work. I'll talk about it at home. Like, I just did not include or enjoy. Like, it was just like, whatever. So I'm in Operalia. Like, I just didn't really care. And then at one point, it was all taken away from me. I was already in Europe. I'd finished the stint in Rome, and I was, living in Rome, studying privately, trying to get a job unsuccessfully. And I had a really bad health issue, and I couldn't walk for months, and I had to be in a back brace. And my dad came over, and he took me out of the hospital where I was, where they wanted to operate, and I didn't want to be operated. And he took me back to the place I was living in and stayed with me for about a month until I could be more independent. Like, I couldn't do up my shoes. I couldn't do anything. And I remember at that point, he said to me, you know what? You've tried everything. You've worked. You've lived without a house. You've struggled and everything, and this whole situation, you've really done everything you can, and I won't hold it against you. If you want to give up and come back now, you can come back, and I won't think you didn't try. And I was furious with him. I was like, this is not the time to tell me to stop. And so that was it. I was like back on track. He probably did it on purpose, you know. He used to lock the piano when I didn't practice.
Right. I'm sure he's your biggest fan.
He certainly is. Although he does have a competitor in my father-in-law. He's also quite fond. He has cinema nights with his friends and like shows me I'm sorry to his friends. A bit like my dad does.
Very proud. You've studied with a series of singing teachers, I imagine, throughout your career.
Yeah.
What is it that the great singing teachers do very well?
Well, my dad is actually my main singing teacher and still is today. We work on Skype, and he's always the one that can fix me, you know, like even whoever I'm studying with at the time, because I, you know, work with lots of people. He's always the person I come back to and say, you know, it's not working, fix it. And I think what he does is he looks at everybody individually. And it's what I learned also from him in my teaching, is that I'll look at a student and, you know, I might say in a masterclass, I might say to a student, you know, do this or do that. And then I'll have to say to this student here, don't listen. This is not good for your voice. This is not good for your voice. So I think great teachers treat people as individuals because we have different physicalities. And it is, the more I go ahead, the more I really don't think it's a one size fits all. There are certain techniques that need to be applied. The breath needs to be fundamental. The position of the voice needs to be high and in the mask. But how you get there are so many paths. And I think it's important to be open. And one of the reasons I wanted to start teaching younger was because I wanted to remember how frustrated I was with my teachers, including my father, especially my father. I had massive fights with my father. Still do. I'm still petulant with him when I study. But then every now and then I'll call him up after a lesson that I've given to someone. I'll be like, yeah, Dad, I'm really sorry about that. You were right. Now I'm getting it from the other end.
Is there an age where it is good for a voice to start having lessons, or can you be any age? I mean, you know,
yes.
Talking children.
No, I think for opera lessons, I think you really need to have matured. So even though you don't hear it, female voices break as well. So just like you wouldn't teach a choir boy who has a soprano voice to sing operatically, you wait for their voice to break and then you work with that voice. It's the same with women. And I don't think you should really start until they're about, 18, 19, in my opinion. But I mean, some people start earlier. So
yeah,
it's just that I think we're so malleable when we're younger that we don't develop our own individuality if we're taught vocally too young. We end up becoming just sort of a cookie cutter singer and not finding your own voice and bringing that out.
Yeah. You've got a phenomenal, over 30 roles, I think, in your repertoire. How long does it take to prepare and learn a role?
Do you want the real answer? A few weeks. In fact, sometimes a few days. Depending on the circumstances. I think I couldn't actually say what I have to do no matter what the situation. If they say to me, you have to debut Zebanet in 3 weeks, or if I have 5 months, it's the same process. I just have to go very slowly through the role and if it's a short-term learn because, somebody's cancelled and they need me to jump in and it's a rare opera, I've kind of become the go-to for that situation because they know that I can learn music quickly. So even if I only have a couple of weeks, I will try and make myself believe that I have 6 months. So the minute I get nervous, I can't learn music. The minute I try to learn music, I can't learn music. So I just basically just keep, playing through it, like keeping my mind in the idea that we're just having fun. And then it just sinks in on its own. The music comes easier than the words. If it's French, I'm in trouble if it's a few weeks. If it's Italian, I'm fine.
Do you listen to other singers in the role, for CDs or recordings? No, never. You're creating your own version.
Yes, absolutely. But I think that comes from the fact that when I started singing, my main repertoire was rare operas that had never been performed before, so there was no reference. And because that became my way of working, it didn't make sense to me, even when I learned La Fille de Regiment or Traviata, I didn't listen to the other Traviatas or Daughter of the Regiments until I'd learnt the role, memorized it, decided what I wanted to do, and then I would go and listen, because that way you're listening actively and not passively. You know, you've already looked at the music, so if they're singing something different, you know they're singing something different because it's not what you learned. And so you can then decide, do I like it? Do I want to steal it and use it myself, or do I want to leave it there? If you start by listening, you're going to pick up their choices or their accidents without even knowing it. It's just going to be subconscious, and then you're going to actually spend more time getting rid of it, because a lot of singers think that it's a fast way of learning, but it's actually not. In the long term, it's slower.
It must be a treat to return to a role like Lucia over many years and to refine and finesse the performance.
I restudied it, actually. I restudied it big time just before the COVID hit, because I was going to do it with Pido in Sale, actually. And I'd written a new cadenza, we'd written new variations, we were going to do it all in the original tonalities, which means the mad scene is a tone higher, the first aria is half a tone higher, and also the scene with Enrico, I think, is a tone higher. It might be half tone. I can't remember now. I think it's half tone higher. And it's way better. I prefer it like that. So at my 100th Lucia, I felt like I was in a position to tell people that I wanted to do it in the original tonalities. So I started insisting that everybody let me sing it in the original tonalities. So, you know, sometimes I get them to do it, other times not. You know, they have to pay for the critical edition. It costs more money, so it's tricky. But it's nicer. I like it. So yeah, I restudy it every time, and there's always something new to learn. Also, as we grow and change, my interpretation of life and what's happening in these roles changes. You know, as you get older, you lose people that are, you know, important to you, and you start seeing things differently. So yeah, the roles are constantly changing.
What should have been your opening night routine, Jessica? Is there a ritual that you go through?
Freaking out. No, I'm super nervous until I get into the theater, and then I'm perfectly fine. I'm like, hi, everybody. Everything's okay once I walk through the door. Until I get to the door, everything is not okay. So my poor husband has to deal with me, and I'm quite a nightmare, I think. I just can't do anything. I just go doolally, you know. I can't concentrate. Like he goes spare with me because I'll do something like half an hour before I have to leave for the theatre, I'll decide I have to rehem my skirt that I'm going to wear that night in a concert, and and he knows he has to let me hem it, because if I don't hem it, it's not going to be okay. I'm just going, no, it's okay. We got time. And he's like, I'm getting nervous. We need to leave now. But my only rule is I do not go out from lunchtime the day before the show. Right. Because I can't deal with the stress. I just can't. And the day of the show, I never go out. Because even being in a coffee shop at 11 o'clock in the morning and I want to pay the coffee and the person doesn't come, I'll start getting super nervous because I'm going to miss the show tonight because I can't pay my coffee at 11:10. So, and I can't hold a conversation. So, people will often say, oh, why don't we see each other between the shows? And I'm like, you're not going to see me. You're going to see a zombie version of me. Yeah. And so it's easy with my husband because I can, he can talk. But if he's not here, no way. I just stay at home.
What are you looking forward to most with the Tales of Hoffmann and presenting it at the Opera House? I
don't know. I think right now I've only staged Olympia, and I love the staging for Olympia, so that's great. And some of Antonia, and that's looking good too. So I don't know. I'd have to see the whole thing before I know. Because I think it's beautiful.
It's a new production, of course, and then it's going off to Covent Garden.
It is, yes.
How exciting! Well, I'm excited, but I suppose you've been to Covent Garden before, haven't you?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that old thing, yeah.
No, and I'm actually doing Hoffmann in October as well in Bilbao, and then I do. Hoffmann is becoming my new Lucia. I think I've got it twice a year for the next I don't know how many years. So yeah, I'm gonna have to get comfortable with it.
Brilliant. Well, Jessica, thank you so much for this conversation over the past hour. It's been absolutely brilliant to meet you and have this chat and a few laughs and chookas for the Tales of Hoffmann. It's going to be sensational.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed indeed. Thanks, Jessica.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you to the team at Opera Australia for coordinating this conversation with Jessica Pratt. He's hoping that it is not too long before we can see the new production of Offenbach's The Tales of Hoffmann. We send great love and support to everyone at Opera Australia. Hang in there. We look forward to nights at the Opera once again when we can all convene. Thank you to Maestro Brian Castles-Onion for providing the magnificent musical excerpts featured in this episode, and to my very special guest, Jessica Pratt. It is always a pleasure to have your company. You can follow the Stages podcast on our Instagram and Facebook socials, and don't forget that you can find all of the episodes featured in the podcast thus far by visiting our website, www.stagespodcast.com.au. I'm Peter Eyers. Please keep well, keep warm, stay safe, and I'll catch you next time.